Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your lunch and have enjoyed the morning. I thought it was a great first half of the day. Thank you again for being here. I'm Diane Schwartz. I'm group publisher of PR News. And now we're going to have our Taste of Tech panel Q&A to talk about PR's relationship with technology. And we have many of our partners here on the panel to share some ideas, thoughts, food for thought. We have Serena Ehrlich, Business Wire. Yeah?
It's lunchtime.
To her left is Brandon Andersen, who you heard from before. Do we have an applause meter to see who's most popular? And then to Serena's right is Trace Cohen. Trace is with a new company called Launch.It. Brandon's with Cision, Serena's with Business Wire. Next to Trace is Robb Henshaw, who you heard from earlier with inPowered. And then last but not least is Dave Armon with Critical Mention. So, thank you for being here. And we'll start with describing, if each of you could describe your company, your technology, in sort of 140 characters, sort of tweet it out loud.
Fastest TV, milliseconds, LOL.
Dave, why don't you go first?
Do it again.
That was it. I have room for a twit pic.
Something helpful so people can understand exactly what you bring to the audience here in terms for the PR
Critical
community.
makes TV searchable in real time, and our clients use it because they know that if they don't know what happened on TV, they're not going to know why their social stream is spiking with some comment about something that was just on TV that they need to get their hands on. So brands set up alerts like a Google alert, and we monitor every single television station in the US, in Canada, in the UK, and we send you an email within a minute of airtime. Actually, there's a brand new feed that we have that's actually milliseconds. And a lot of the platforms that are up here on the stage, when they need to add TV to their service, they actually come to Critical Mention and they plug in our API, and we provide the TV to a lot of the other platforms. So we have a lot of frenemies up here. Or we're in co-opetition. So that's our business.
That's the word, co-opetition.
Thank you, Dave. Please hold the microphone up to everyone.
Well, Dave wants to be provocative, so I'm just going to make a prediction that TV's going to be dead in like 2 years. It's just, so at inPowered, you guys heard a little bit about this before. We discover and amplify all the greatest, most influential expert content that's already being written about your brand, not the stuff that you're writing about yourself. That's important too. What we focus on though is the expert content that's already been being written about your brand. And why our customers use us is to go ahead and start with a base of credibility and trust with their user base by saying, hey, look at what all the experts are already saying about us. And then once you have that layer of credibility and trust, then your branded content has a lot more impact. So
I think that was more than 140 characters, but that was
TV's done. Yeah, all right, I'll keep it to $1.40. So we are Launch.It, and we are a free PR publishing platform for agencies, small businesses, and startups to publish and socialize everything new. I want to create the largest searchable database to make sure all your news can be found, shared, and discovered.
Most of you know Business Wire. We're a commercial newswire service. We're actually the least expensive way to get your content and your news out to all the audiences you're looking forward to reaching. So if you're creating content and you're not using a newswire to send it out, how far is your content really going? Pow. That's how I usually end my tweets.
Pow?
Well, sometimes
hashtag pow?
Sometimes it's hashtag PR, but mostly it's pow.
All right.
Brandon.
So at Cision, we're a PR and marketing software company. We do influencer identification, press release distribution, media monitoring, we do media analysis, and we do content marketing all in one suite.
Great. So by way of raising your hands, how many of you work with outside vendors, partners, technology partners? How many of you do not? Oh, two or three people. Great. Okay, so the next question for the panel is, given your access to so many clients and hearing their stories and their challenges, what would you recommend, or what are you seeing in terms of the PR or marketing professional proving the value of what they're doing to the C-suite? Brandon?
So, I mean, really what we're seeing, so as we were kind of talking about in the presentation before lunch, we're really seeing that it needs to get down to actual ROI, like dollars and cents, and really driving engagement and how engagement then drives into actual actions and how those actions then go into the sales funnel, and then also nurturing people along the way within that sales funnel. So we're noticing that a lot more. That's really kind of a big piece that we're seeing from the social side.
You know, while you're speaking, I was thinking about the survey PR News just did with Cision, and proving sales from your social media efforts was really low. It was on the list. I mean, what are your comments on that? That's surprising.
So the top 3 were pretty, ones that we figured would be there. Around engagement, actually like clicks back to a website was number 1. But then, yeah, the fact that sales leads and then revenue from those leads were actually at the very bottom. It's not exactly surprising. The whole idea of tying all that back is a relatively, it seems like a complicated thing to do, and people are still trying to figure it out, but it's absolutely attainable. So it's just a matter of changing our mindset a little bit around, we think social is just about engagement. It is very strongly about engagement, but that engagement needs to lead to something.
So can I hit back with
back to
Robb?
the question.
Hey, Robb, when's the last time you tweeted while watching TV? So there wouldn't be a second screen experience.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. Or, Jeopardy, that can, is that woman ever going to lose, right? They have a 21-day champion now. It's amazing, Julia. Twitter is banking a lot of its future on the second screen and active social participation with TV. So getting back to your question,
the value
Diane,
of PR.
the value of PR to the C-suite, it's really about measurement. And luckily, there is a lot of metadata. There's ratings information about total viewership for those who use ad equivalencies, and it's not a bad word in all circles. Certainly in marketing, it's an important attribute. And those are the types of meaty numbers that you can measure and report up and justify your expense for your marketing group, and also demonstrate engagement.
Yeah, for our clients, when I did PR, it was all about credibility. So I got my clients in like TechCrunch, New York Times, and sometimes when I got them covered, there were no clicks, no eyeballs, but people saw it and they read it, but there wasn't so much engagement. But the client could then brag, hey, I was on TechCrunch in the New York Times. It was all about recognition, seeing the logo, seeing the company and what they did. But from a marketing standpoint, you have to see it 3, 4, maybe 5 times until maybe you use it. And once people see that, it gives you a level of credibility. So when you get into the sales part of it, it's a little bit of a gray area, because did I get $10, $100, $1,000? It's kind of hard to justify the sales and the ROI, but definitely with measurement and engagement it helps, but it's all about credibility at the end of the day.
I think that softness is kind of part of the problem at the C-suite level of saying, oh, well, we were on TechCrunch, and the idea of being on TechCrunch or the exposure, without being able to tie it to something. And I agree with Brandon. I think it is absolutely attainable to get to a place where you can say, this coverage resulted in X, whether that was traffic that converted to sales, whether that was increased brand consideration and purchase intent. I think those are all things that are absolutely attainable. You just need to, have the right systems in place to automate that type of.
Okay, so this is all completely obtainable. The CEO, if you want to get the CEO suite to understand and respect PR, we have to speak in the CEO terms. The truth is, marketing has been measurable for years and years and years, but PR we have allowed, and because of the way PR works, it has been less easy to measure. The truth is, the biggest #1 component for PR is awareness. And awareness can't, even today with all the technology out there, it cannot always be measured. But, and I actually just wrote an extremely long calculation and formula for this. If anybody actually wants the calculation of how to do an ROI of a press release, let me know, I can share that. But what we can do is there's a lot of things you can track. You can actually do so much more tracking now with PR, thanks to technology, that if you start pulling these things out and start tracking, but not just tracking hits and awareness, but as you guys have all noted, the next steps, that's the findings the C-suite wants from PR. They actually don't expect PR to drive sales, but they do expect PR to come back to them and say, here are the trends we're seeing. Here are the trends that we're seeing on these networks. Here's what we're listening to. here's what we're hearing, here's where the business needs to be going. And it also needs to be the person, every company, sorry, real quick, every one of us in this room, our brands have brand fans, right? Our organizations have brands fans. So it's up to PR's job to really listen to not only what's happening in the industry, but also what's happening within your own client base. It's these evolutions that the C-suite cares about. It's these long-term findings that you're getting. It's not the short-term tweak of, do I do a video in the morning or do I do a video in the afternoon, which, by the way, was the best tip so far today. But it's really the bigger learnings of what's the trend happening, where your client's going to be, what do they care about, and that way you can get it, your C team can get ahead of that. Don't worry about the smaller minutia. It's the big findings that drive the company that you guys are able to track and that you're generating.
Yeah.
PR should take it's a year of PR. This is the year where everybody in this room should be the most important person in your company, and it's because you can measure this.
God, amen.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Publicity is not the end goal. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing to keep in mind, is that we've always thought publicity, once we get it, then we're done. That's our job. We're done. No, you're not done. Like, you have to pull it back around,
Yeah.
and you have to have that next action.
Publicity is nothing but a focus group for your C-suite. It's how you translate it. Pow!
Well
drop
said,
mic.
yeah.
Caffeine, people.
So with content marketing being increasingly important, and we heard today that content marketing is not a campaign, it's a commitment, and a lot of brands are investing in journalists and creating newsrooms and so forth. I mean, what are your views on that? How are you helping clients fill the content funnel?
I'll just very quickly start. First thing you guys should be doing is do a content asset audit. In your company, find out, I guarantee your sales teams have created assets that you know nothing about. I guarantee your marketing team, your international teams, there is so much content within your own company. The first thing you have to do is figure out where it is and pull it all together. And then the second thing is if you really want to start with a content program and you have not done that before, please start with your FAQs. The fastest thing to move people through your marketing and sales funnel is to educate people on who you are. And most of us in this room assume things that our actual customers don't know. So if you start with creating content around your FAQs, the things people ask you the most, you'll actually be starting a very successful program. Now I'll let the experts talk.
I was going to say, so one of the things to really look at as well, so looking at the content audit that's awesome. That's a great place to start. Look at and this was brought up this morning, look for your internal people who are your hidden thought leaders. This is something at Cision that we found a number of years ago. We have an entire research department, and all they do is they research the media. It's their job. That's all they do day in and day out. They research the media all the time. They have so much information to share that we thought, oh my God, this is a gold mine. So we have, in our blog, we publish media updates all the time. We do all these different pieces. We do pieces on journalists. And it's completely free, and it was something that we would have had to pay, a ton of money to get this kind of content externally, and we had it sitting under our nose in what is, probably our most important asset within our company.
So how many people here have a degree or a background in journalism? Right, and now you're in PR. And so what we wanted to introduce at Launch.It was the term PR journalism. I know those words should never really go together, but you produce so much great content that you write press releases, you write news releases, but you can also write blog posts. People can believe what we do in PR. And so that's what we wanted to instill, that there's a news release, you can write a blog post. And from my time in PR, I became an expert in every single field, whatever my client was. So I can tell you I know way too much about digital comics, way too much about e-commerce, and I can write great stories that doesn't compete with the media, but it may disintermediate them to fill in the gaps of what they can't cover. And that's what I want all PR professionals to do, is to just produce content, whether it's a tweet, a news release, or a blog post. You can be a thought leader for your industry.
How many of you feel like you don't have enough resources internally to crank out a bunch of content? Quite a few. So I think I completely agree with everything that's been said, but I think there needs to be a balance between creation and curation. There's a lot to be said for, the FAQs is a great point. If you're not educating your consumers yourself, you can't really expect anybody else to do it for you. I think definitely leveraging, the people inside your organization to create more is fantastic. But if you don't have that, if you don't have people who can constantly be cranking out more content, go and take a look at the people who are already saying great things about you, curate that content, sprinkle it out there, kind of balance it with your own stuff, and create kind of a more well-rounded, strategy where you're introducing your own content, but you're also introducing the things that people have already said about you, which also has, the air of credibility because you're not saying about yourself.
And It probably won't be a surprise to you, Diane, but I think that in the content marketing realm, video content marketing is a big growth area. And for those who don't think you have the internal resource to do enough, text blog posts or updates to your social channels, that might even seem to be even of a bigger, puzzle to solve. But there are ways to do it, both by looking at your internal archive, like we heard earlier from Serena, of just stuff that's sitting on the shelf and cut it up and freshen it up and publish it. But there's also a lot of earned media that's out there that's actually licensable about you, that you can take and put in a player and put on your site and be proud of. And then there's brand journalism, but done with a camera. And a good example of that is Goodyear recently introduced a new fleet of airships, and they get plenty of coverage about the Goodyear blimp. It's an easy sell, that story, but not about the technical aspects of what kind of fabric you're going to use and what are the LED lights going to be. That's boring for regular TV. But they just gave their PR folks at the blimp hangars cameras and said, "Go produce this stuff." And they've put it out there, and it's brilliant content for the niche group of blimp aficionados who are watching it. There's about 30,000 of them, but it's good.
Thank you. So the rising use of technology, so many things are becoming automated or programmatic, and what do you think how does that gel with PR and the human touch and the analytical side, the insightful side that PR brings to things? How do PR and technology work together in that way?
I definitely don't think that we're at a place where we're in danger of communications being automated. I think we have a lot of great tools that automate processes, which is extremely useful. But without that human touch, without the relationship building, the things that are core to this business, there's only so much automation can do for you. But I do think that there's so many platforms, so many tools available to all of us that can cut down the time we spend finding the experts that we want to be pitching to begin with, the people who are already writing about our industry, people who are writing about our competitors. There's so many tools that can automate processes of the communication overall communication schema, but not the actual the deal makers, the piece of the communications process that actually gets the result.
And if you put it on autopilot, you're in trouble. You can't automate judgment.
Yeah, that's true. And the more automated it is, the less personal it feels. We all hate the emails that we get just because we signed up for something and we get the automatic email right back. It just doesn't feel real, and that's not going to work for ongoing communications, practices.
Yeah, so technology basically gave us the ability to communicate with the masses. But what we're seeing, and this is, we're seeing it in the media as well as we're getting more and more niche publications now, is that it's really becoming more one-to-one, and I don't think that the human touch will ever be taken out of that. Basically, as you were, like Robb was saying, the technology just enables us to identify the people who we should be talking to, and having those conversations still happens at a human level. Yeah. So that's something that we should never think like, oh, it's got to all be automated. These tools help us be more one-to-one with people, and as a PR person, if you can be one-to-one with somebody, that's kind of that's a great thing to do, because you are pitching directly to that one person. Not even pitching, you're helping that one person, and that's making a huge difference in how they view you and your company.
I think the feedback loop may be more automated moving forward, too. So it'll always be on. Instead of you just doing UGC campaigns to get a good video or a good bunch of photos in for user-generated content, it can always be there as a link on your site or on your media room that just says, upload your video, how you've interacted with our brand, and then you can curate it, like Robb says, and it's a way to get authentic content brought to you on a continuous basis.
Serena?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is I agree with everybody here. Exactly what you said. Technology is about making your process easier. I will say that one thing, how many people in this room have paid for a subscription of any type of technology, PR, marketing software, and they don't like it? Whether it's your monitoring service or this and that. I think this is the big thing that we've got to do. It's truthfully, and I said this at the last PR News conference in D.C., this is the year where you have to break those contracts. You have to get out of using these terrible services that we all locked ourselves into for 3 years for $100,000 to use a monitoring platform that nobody in your team can access. So I think this is really the year of owning that as a write-off, and embracing the tool, because there's so many more tools now that can give you what you want. Remember, this is the year of the personalized experience for consumers. Well, it's also the year of the personalized experience for you guys. So get rid of these tools that you're not using, or sit down with them and learn how to use them. But the biggest problem, I think, in PR today is not the future of automation, but it's the amount of automation that's available right now that we are not using and not embracing and not bothering to learn because it's difficult. And without that, knowing how to use these tools, we're not getting the same results other people are.
And we're also seeing that tools are moving forward pretty quickly. I know within our industry, I mean, we all in some way kind of compete against each other. So I think we can all kind of speak to this. But what we see a lot is that we compete and we keep moving along these tools, and sometimes the users don't go along with it because the users have their process. And they're like, okay, you have added all this stuff, but is that really necessary to me right now? And a lot of it's education, helping people understand, like, here's why. And I think that's on us. It's on us to say, here's why you need these new tools. Here's why you need something like social demographics. This is why you need to know that. And this is, here's the takeaway. And I think that sometimes we've had some issues where we haven't been able to convey that.
Yeah.
And I'll just quickly add that the takeaways that you're getting from vendors today, if you sit down with your vendors today, are the C-suite takeaways. What you signed up for a few years ago, you were doing PR measurement. Now what all these tools are doing is they're trying to help you meet your CEO metrics. So sitting down, you're really seeing there's a lot of use case out there that people, again, it's not the evolution of our own in process.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more hardball question. But if you have a question for any of the panelists up here, please come up to the microphone as I ask my last question. So in our joint survey that we did together with PR News and our partners, about 40% of the respondents said that they don't really hear from their vendors very often. They don't ask them their opinion of the product. They sell it, and then they're kind of done with the customer. So how can we improve that relationship? You sort of touched on it a second ago. But how can we improve on the relationship between the client and the vendor?
I think it's back it up with service. Just you're selling a username and password in a lot of cases, but you better have the white glove service in the background, because there are PR people that are in the back of a taxi cab that need something now because the crisis is unfolding.
What should the audience be asking you guys? For?
Give me examples of 24/7. Give us references of your customer.
And ask us what we're seeing our customers doing successfully. And, if we work for a newswire service, so I'll use measurement as a different example, so I'm not pimping us. But if you're using a measurement platform and you think you're not getting the best, you don't really like it, it's not easy to use, sit down and say, here are my 3 competitors. I want to be monitoring and using, because again, it's all about taking that insight and using it. Show me how they're doing it. Because every vendor up here and in this audience has amazing examples that we could show. It's just sometimes people think that we're meeting to sell and versus meeting to discuss. Right. And I think that's the question, is you can also say, listen, I'm not interested in buying your product, but I'd love to talk and learn more. Can we do that? And just ask.
And frankly, just ask us for what particular, products and features you need. Yeah. I think a lot of us up here, we all have the luxury of being small enough and nimble enough where we can cater, and we actually view it as our responsibility to cater to.
I think everybody up here has created products directly from our customer base. I know we have. I know you guys have. Just specifically from one client saying, "I need this. What can you do?"
Yeah, exactly. So I was in Scottsdale at a conference last year, and I had just gotten into marketing. I was in product development, moved to marketing, and I had someone come up to me and they said, I need functionality that does this. And it was really it was simple. It was really simple and just something that we didn't have. And I was like, okay, that's great. That's what we need to hear. And I was able to take that back to our product development team, and we had it implemented in 2 months. 2 months later, she had the thing that she needed just because she talked to me. And that's the thing. If you just talk to us and give us your feedback, we want feedback. We really, really want feedback, because that's going to make us all better. It's going to make us all more successful.
Yeah, I have 2 rules when it came to PR and getting feedback. First is I always try to hug my clients. People do business with people they like to do business with. And I have a lot of clients I've never met before, so when I meet them, we go out, I hug them, because we don't like to automate our processes, so you want a real human touch. A handshake is great, but a hug is more friendly.
Taking that human touch literally.
Oh, yeah. And then the second one is setting expectations, especially when it came to PR. You never wanted to oversell, but you never wanted to overpromise, but you always wanted to overdeliver. And so between the human touch and being realistic with your client, saying this is what we're expecting and this is what we can do, then asking for feedback is great, but then hopefully they'll expect you to do that as soon as possible. Tech is hard to build, so it doesn't move as quickly as some clients expect it to. So it's all about expectations and, having a good hugging relationship.
One of the things that comes to mind in answering that question is the cocktail reception we had last night, which was for the attendees of this meeting and yesterday's social media awards. We're 3 blocks from here at 43rd and 5th, and the engineers came down. We have 2 floors in the building, about 75 people, and the software engineers came down and actually mingled, got drunk with, in quotes, with members of this team, though, and found out, what it is that you like and don't like about the product. It's not keeping people isolated in silos, and these regular focus groups and these discussions and an open product roadmap are key for you working with anyone that's a supplier.
Yeah, and pick vendors that will give you visibility into the roadmap, vendors that ask for your feedback. I mean, we always want proactive feedback, so please give that to us. But find vendors that are willing to ask for it, willing to listen, willing to give you, a peek behind the curtain and see what's coming up, so that you can give them feedback of whether or not they're even working on something that's meaningful to you.
Serena, you get the last word.
I'm going to say that I stole this phrase from somebody else, but I really think it fits for everybody up here and the vendors in the space as well as you guys in your own companies. We have to move past thinking about user experience and customer experience, and we have to start really focusing on customer expectations and PR, and that's what we all do. All day long, we're attempting and we work to meet customer expectations. So if we're not meeting expectations, always give us feedback. I think everybody who works for all of these companies are pretty open to hearing it.
Yeah, and please don't call us vendors. We're partners. Vendors is such a bad word.
Scarlet V.
I'd like to thank
Vendors
our
don't
partners.
hug. Partners hug.
Can we all have
today.
a hug?
What's that?
We should all hug. I think.
Yeah, please.
Should we do a selfie?
I did a selfie, but we should do another
group
one.
hug, #PR News. And thank you. Seriously, it was a great conversation. Thanks for sharing your ideas. Please visit our partners outside by the registration area, and I'm going to call back up Steve Goldstein to introduce our keynote speaker.